So, show of hands. Can you guys hear me with the mic like this? Because I'd rather not hold it. Who here has a productive, optimistic, creative, never-ending imagination?
Well, yeah, I think.
Always productive. Well, that's great. Mine isn't always productive. I found that, there are nights that I wake up in the middle of the night and I think it's morning. I'm wide awake. And my mind already starts going. What am I going to do? How am I going to? And then I look at the clock and it's 3 a.m. I'm like, oh no. How am I going to fall back to sleep? And I start tossing and turning, and then the thoughts come. But the horrific thoughts, the bills. How am I going to pay the bills? Do I have enough work this week? The pain in my leg, what is that? Is that cancer? That's my imagination sometimes too, right? Sometimes it's bills, sometimes it's kids, who knows? But the fact is, that is imagination, but it is not the proper use of the power of imagination that we've been given. The power of imagination is actually a spiritual power that we've been given by God. And my talk today is the power of imagination in my world. So how it works. And what I'm going to talk about is how it came about, and then I'm going to give you 3 easy steps on how we can always use our imagination for productivity, for upliftment, for enlightenment, the way it was supposed to be used. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, he studied many faiths and many religions and many different people. And when he studied Jesus, he saw that the apostles, each one of them embodied a faculty or a discipline. And each one of those faculties and disciplines are within each of us. And as we develop them, we get closer and closer to developing our Christ consciousness. This is our journey towards the Christ consciousness that we have within us. So the revealing word says the power of imagination is the faculty of mind that imagines and forms, the power to shape and form thought, the ability to visualize, conceptualize, and envision. And the location of this power is right in the middle of the forehead, and it's a light blue color. And the disciple is Bartholomew. And the story behind Bartholomew is he was actually asked by Philip to go see Jesus speak. And he said to Philip, Philip was bragging about Jesus. He's a great teacher. He's a great healer. And he says to Philip, this man is from Nazareth. Has anything good ever come from Nazareth? And right there, he was judging. And I asked myself, where in my life have I said that? Has anything good ever come from this? And that judgment keeps us stuck from not looking beyond. That judgment keeps our opinions of others very limited. It doesn't stay open. But the difference is that Bartholomew said that, but he went anyway. He went anyway. And he had the opportunity afterwards to talk one-on-one with Jesus. And in that talk, Jesus said, earlier today when you were sitting under the fig tree, you were praying, and Bartholomew was like, wait a minute. There is no way he could have seen me with his eyes. He was not there. Jesus was somewhere else, and Bartholomew was under the fig tree. So he knew that this was a kind of vision that is greater than that of his physical eyes, and that this man had the kind of vision that Bartholomew wanted in his life. And Jesus promised that to him. He said, you can have this kind of vision. You shall see this and greater things. So Jesus didn't just promise that to Bartholomew, right? That's the promise to all of us. We all can have that kind of vision. So we have 2 ways of seeing in our life, right? We have vision with our eyes, and we have vision in our mind, our imagination. And our imagination is working all the time. But what the power of imagination is about is being conscious about how we're using that power. So have you ever had something happen in your life that felt really bad, and you said, what good is going to come from this? Why do I have to go through it? I know I have. One of the ones was when Michael died. I was with the man for 2.5 years, and he died, and I just did not know what good was going to come out of that. And quite frankly, me standing here is one of the things that came out of it. There's a lot of hatred in the world, things that we don't like. But the truth is, good can come out of those things that we don't like, always. But we have to be willing to look and see it. In the communication of God with man, this faculty plays an important part. Our divine ideas come from above, right? When we ask the questions, what can I do? The answers come from within, right? They come, and so that we have to trust that that's coming from God. The power of imagination is when divine ideas come and reflect them as images into the soul, as dreams and visions. Through imagination, the formless take form. Everything in the physical world began in someone's imagination. Everything. The stuff that we like and the horrible stuff that we don't like. This is what's meant by the scripture, ye shall see the heaven open and angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. Those angels are our thoughts. So they're coming from God when we ask, when we're open and willing to see that. So I'm going to jump over to another person. You may have heard of him, Albert Einstein. He's known for his intellect and his genius, but he also had a lot of great things to say about imagination. One of his quotes is, knowledge is the map that guides us, while imagination is the territory where we can roam freely and search for answers and opportunities. Imagination knows no restraints and is the power that puts knowledge to use. Imagination puts power to use. Puts knowledge to use, sorry. He said, I am enough of an artist to draw freely upon my imagination. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Imagination is more important than knowledge. I have to say that to myself over and over again because I think sometimes what I think is more important than my imagination. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. Imagination is everything. It is the preview of life's coming attractions because, what I just said earlier, everything was in someone's imagination before it became physical in the physical world. Einstein also said, I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious. He's always asking questions. Passionately curious. Are you passionately curious? As truth seekers, most of us are. We're always looking for the answer. Ed Rabel, he's another scholar who studied a lot of Charles Fillmore's work, and I loved what he had to say. He said, for this faculty to become perfect, we must be trained to do the work for which it was created to do in the first place. To image in the same manner as our Creator imaged us. That is in his image. So we have to image and imagine the way God imagined, because we are made in the likeness and image of God, right? So our job here is to see things the way God saw them. And how's that? In truth. God saw truth. God saw love. So to be able to see things in love. So what that means is maybe to help others see truth. Maybe to help forgive. Help others to forgive and for us to forgive. It's about thinking positively. And that's just the first step, thinking positively, because then from there you begin to see the truth. And then ultimately the fully mature, fully illumined imagination is when this faculty becomes a disciple of our own Christ nature. A disciple of our own Christ nature. Its office is to form truth thoughts. Our imagination is to form truth thoughts and project them in a form usable in our environment. So we're all here at this time on this planet right now because we have something to offer. Each and every one of us, not just one of us, but every one of us has something to offer. And it's the, I don't know if I want to say responsibility or job or whatever it is that we want to do, to delve in and find out what that is. We call this the ministry of our Jesus Christ self. And one divine idea that I know of, and we see them all the time, you know, we experience other people's divine ideas all the time. But this makes me think of someone you may have heard of. His name is John Lennon.
Yeah.
Anyone heard of him? He wrote a song called Imagine. Now, I'm not going to sing the song for you.
Why not?
I'll say some of the words, but the song is a clear representation of his divine connection. Our imagination is our link to our creative power of God. It is the union between our heart and our head. So some of the words in Imagine is, imagine there's no heaven, above us only sky, and no hell below us. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there are no countries, which means no separation, right? Imagine all the people living life in peace. No need to kill or die for. You may say I'm a dreamer. I hope someday you can join us and the world will be as one. That's what unity sees already, right? That's what we talk about. We are all one. This is the power of imagination in the spiritual realm, each of us seeking and telling the truth. We were told that we were made in the likeness and image of God. This song is a clear description of what that would be like on this planet. And we all have that capability. So, what are you using your imagination for? Are you using it to be productive? Are you using it for truth? Are you using it to be the best that you can be? I want to read something from this book. Courage, Conviction, and Consciousness. This was yesterday's reading. Each one of us is important because each one of us has been created in the image of God. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he. Not in terms of physical form, but in terms of created thinking entities. The New Testament affirms, Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. Namely, no heights may we know. Namely, to what heights may we grow? We are important, you and I, because God needs us to express himself. You and I, every one of us, God needs to express himself through each and every one of us. Whatever our education, social or financial status, or color, God needs us to express abundance in living, to express freedom in terms of constructive activity, to be our true self or exercise our divine potential, but not in terms of license or action at the expense of others. Not at the expense of others. I thought my vision was getting worse as I was standing up. The world belongs, the very wise have said, to him who accepts his truth humbly, acts upon it courageously, and fulfills it grandly. But we have to know what that is. We have to look within and use our imagination and ask for our divine ideas as to what that is for each and every one of us. So, how many times have you looked into something and said, there's nothing good that's going to come out of this? Or is your imagination always igniting your spirit for growth? We can think ourselves into a state of heaven, or we can think ourselves into a state of hell. I was teaching a class one day, and it was kind of in the beginning of my teaching, and a gentleman came in, and I thought he was a plant. I thought it was the place where I was teaching, they were planting someone there to see how I was doing. I made this all up in my head. I got so overwhelmed, and I gave everybody a break. I had to take 15 minutes, okay? And then I completely changed my presentation. I went back to a presentation that I felt much more comfortable with. And in the end, I found out he was just another guy in the class. And I was like, wow, I can't believe I did that. We judge something as good or bad. We do that ourselves. But what is the truth? When we look at something and we're deciding that it's bad for us, if we could just remember that God lives here too. We are all created in the likeness and image of God. Do you believe that? Show of hands. Do you believe that we are all created? Yeah, in the likeness and image of God. The truth is that God is love. And our first principle here at Unity is, the truth is that there is one power and one presence in my life, and that is God the good. And this one power flows through all of us. So when I see or when you see things that bring you deep pain or you feel like they're horrible, can you stop and have your feelings about it, but know that possibly good will come of it? Our imagination could cause us to awfulize a situation or to see the good in it. When things begin to happen, we want to make up stories. Because we want to know the answer. We want to feel like we're in some kind of control. And the best thing that we could say is God's in charge here, right? Keep an open mind. Don't make up stories. Unless there's good, if you want to make up stories, make up good stories. Stories with happy endings, right? So the first thing is, when you find that your imagination is kind of going down the rabbit hole, you stop yourself and say, well, that's interesting. Isn't that interesting? Look at the judgment I'm putting on something. Look at the limitation my mind is putting on this. Become aware that you have judgments. The second thing is to look twice. When we were taught to drive, I don't know if you were, but I was always taught, look twice. Look to the right, look to the left. Look to the right again, look to the left. And we were taught this because we may have missed something the first time, right? So I encourage you, when your imagination is going down the tubes, you say, wow, that's interesting. And look twice. You know, we all have blind spots, right? Sometimes we forget we have blind spots. I know I do. Right, Kate?
Oh, yeah.
So spiritually, look twice. As the beautiful song says that Kenneth sings and we sing, I'm going to look twice at you until I see the Christ in you. When I'm looking through the eyes of love, I'm going to look twice at you. So it doesn't even have to be a person. It could be a situation. I'm going to look twice at you until I can see the Christ in you. Look twice. There's another scripture, the blind man in Bethesda. He went to Jesus to be healed. And Jesus picked up some clay from the ground and he put it on his eyes, on the man's eyes, and he said, be healed. And so the man went to take the clay off, and Jesus said, what do you see? And the man said, well, I see men, but they look like trees walking. And Jesus said, look again. Because the first time we look at something, we don't always see a clear picture. We may not be focusing on everything. We may be focusing on one thing. So the practice to look twice reminds us to look at the facts, feel what we feel, and then be open to seeing something else there. That is spiritual truth. We are made in the likeness and image of God, so be willing to look until you see the good. Are you willing to be curious? Are you willing to look twice? And then the third thing, after you've looked twice, ask, what is mine to be done here? Use me for the greater good. There's a great story by a man named Phil. No, it's not by him, it's about him. Phil Mccrory from Alabama. He's a hairdresser. And back when there was that Exxon Valdez oil spill, he saw on TV the otters that were soaked in oil and how they were dying. And he felt horrible, and he had all these feelings, and all this anger came up. But then he stopped and he looked again and he said, what can I do here? If that happens with otters and their oil and their hair, what can human hair do? So that led him into looking into things, and he discovered that 1 pound of human hair absorbs 1 gallon of oil in less than 2 minutes. So he patented something that NASA uses today that they use for picking up oil spills. So the point is that he looked twice. He had his anger, he had his little hissy fit about what it was, but he was willing to look twice and say, what's mine to do here? What can I do here? And so to summarize all of it, first, notice. and say, that's interesting, how you're judging. Second, look twice, see the facts, deal with them, but then also see there's a higher spiritual truth, there's greater possibility. And then say, use me, God. Use me for the greater good. Allow me to use my imagination to see what is mine to be done here. Everything that has come through someone's imagination. We've all been created to be creative, made in the likeness and image of God. We all need to imagine a better world, like John Lennon's song. So to live your divine potential. Marianne Williamson put it beautifully. We are all meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So go forth and use your imagination for the good and productivity to better all of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you.